Hey, it's Tim Kawakami here, recording from the home studio. 49ers Plus Minus is the show. We're getting ready for a little bit of a downtime next few weeks, but Matt Barrows, my co-host, is here with me to kind of gear up, wrap up the offseason, and set it up for late July when they report. What date do they all report? The veterans come in.
July 23rd.
July 23rd is when we will be total full go on this. We'll go a week or two before that, kind of leading into it. But just to let you know, we'll do this show and then we'll be quiet for a couple of weeks. But unless something happens, as always can happen, and we got a little bit burst of news yesterday. We were recording this on Tuesday morning. Yet Monday, there was a Ryan Clark on ESPN said he talked to Brandon Aiyuk, who had requested a meeting with the 49ers, was in the Bay Area and going to meet with them. Obviously, we have his contractual situation. He is, due for a large contract extension, have not come to terms with the 49ers. Have you get any word on how that went or kind of the process of all that kind of was put together?
No, I haven't. And that in itself, I think, is interesting. Usually, I'll just put out a feeler. Hey, what's this about? Is this important? Is this imminent? I didn't get any responses.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that denotes, tension, or it denotes that how many people are in the building? I mean, how many people is Brandon Ayuk able to meet with? I wouldn't imagine that Kyle Shanahan and his staff are
No.
around. John Lynch might be around, or he might be in Southern California or wherever he vacations. I mean, I don't know who the meeting could have been with. As we've discussed previously, these negotiations aren't with the head coach and the GM. It's with Paraag Marathe and, by extension, Jed York. So I'm not exactly sure who Ayuk wanted to meet with, but I mean, it does suggest that he is really wants to know what's going on. Um, I think I would like to play a high stakes round of poker with Brandon Ayuk. He doesn't seem to deal with the tension of the situation well, or at least coolly. We've seen him react several times. Beginning with the end of the season when he kind of broke down in front of his locker and wasn't sure whether he was going to be around. I thought that was weird. A guy who's under contract for one more season was already sort of rattled by the prospects at that point, and that was mid-February, and here we are mid-June or late June, with still a month to go before training camp, which is what we always thought was going to be the date that really kind of moves the needle on this. And he's reportedly requesting a sit down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a sign that he wants some movement, and in his social media, his TikTok, declaration, the Jane Daniels that they don't want me. You're right. There are things going on here that are above and beyond like just money, right? It's not just dollars. There's some pushing going on, whatever that means. It's possible Ayuk wants to go in and say, okay, if you're not going to move now, I want to be traded. Like, it's I'm not saying that. Don't aggravate me. I'm saying that could be part of this too. Like I just want to know now. But to your point, like the 49ers aren't trading him now. Like we've said this over and over again. If they were going to trade him, it was going to be at the draft. You trade him now, you get the same thing back that you would get if you traded him in, you know, October, or November or next March. Why would you do it now? You're not getting anything out of this. So yeah, I agree with you. Likely it's like he wants a deal. And maybe he feels like there's a deal to be done. 49ers, I think, maybe you don't say, no, 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 we won't meet with you. But like taking this meeting, I think shows the 49ers think there's a way through this. I imagine it's Paraag Marathe and Ayuk's agent, but who knows? It's just different. It's different than we didn't see Nick Bosa come in June,
No,
and we didn't see Debo coming in June and wanted a negotiation. So it's different than the way things have gone. I think maybe the 49ers are like, okay, we don't necessarily need to play it out just as long as they did with Bosa. That was meaningless. That was dumb because they gave Bosa every dollar that they possibly could have. They didn't get anything and they lost. They probably, as Bosa said, it probably kind of knocked them off his stride in the beginning of the season and they didn't have a great season. Debo, same thing. Like, you know, it's a year later that he was not in greatest shape that offseason because he was on, you know, he was wanting a contract. Maybe that's a lesson learned for the 49ers. Maybe if they're going to pay Brandon Aiyuk $29 million a year on September 2nd, just do it now, or at least make the offer. I don't know. It's not their style. I've kind of tossed out maybe, you know, it's about the guaranteed dollars and escrow. And I've since heard like maybe it's just they're just the negotiators. They just believe in hard negotiate. That's what they do. We've met people that, I mean, wouldn't disagree with that. If you're got a salary cap and you're trying to make sure that you can field the best team you can with the dollars available. But if you're going to end up paying them, and you've done this with, been hurt in some ways by taking it so long with everyone else, maybe you just try to do it now. That's what I think. I mean, do you sense that, Barrows?
Yeah, I mean, they should. I mean, let's say that $26 million opening bid is accurate, and I think it is. That's their opening bid. So, you know, this is the dance. You open at 26, thinking that you might go as high as 28.5, 29, whatever the number is. I mean, if you realize that you're going to end up there, why not do it now versus, you know, have a distraction to begin training camp? And you're right, the Bosa situation didn't benefit anybody. It didn't seem like, and I think that you're right to bring that up because Brandon Aiyuk's going to be paid handsomely. We both believe that. I don't think he's going to be as good in 2024 as he was in 2023, only because these guys never are. I mean, go back to Jimmy Garoppolo coming off that miraculous 2017 finish. He signs a big deal. He's not very good in 2018 before he tears his Achilles. Fred Warner, he's Mr. Responsible. You know, he's not, he's working hard throughout the off season that he's negotiating. He has a down year after signing. Bosa has a down year after signing. Debo has a down year after signing. I forget what Kittle did, but basically, you know, we're already at a stage where he's probably going to be affected some way because of the holdout that he's had. So, I mean, I'm just trying to prepare the fans, the listeners for, you know, the pattern has been sign a big deal and then you take a step back a little bit, probably because you've signed that big deal.
It's human nature, right? You have the big year on your contract year in your head, and then get the money, and things change a little. Before everyone starts emailing or whatever. Jimmy Garoppolo was ACL, right? It was not Achilles; it was ACL.
I'm sorry, yeah, ACL.
You know, and that was injury, a game and a half. You know, I get that. It is human nature. You have a great year, there's going to be some, you know, regression to the mean. I think Aiyuk is just as steady as can go. Like, he's one guy who might not go through that just because he's so steady. He's such a consistent player. He helps in so many ways. You know, it's very different than Debo, right? Debo's either going to break 3 tackles and go for 120 yards in a game, or might get 1 catch for 14, right? He's not going to block for you. He's not going to do some other stuff. Aiyuk can give you so much in so many other categories, and maybe that's a sticking point. It's like the stats aren't there, right? The numbers, other than in efficiency, but he does not have the totals because he doesn't get thrown to as much, right? He's got the most yardage by far of anyone who's been targeted as few times as he has, but you don't see that monstrous, you know, 1,500 yard, you know, 110 catch season because they just don't throw it to him as much. So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, and that may be the crux of the negotiation issue, is that he's not a Justin Jefferson or maybe even a CeeDee Lamb. I think he's maybe a notch behind CeeDee Lamb. But that steadiness is what the 49ers want. It's what they need. It's what Brock Purdy needs.
Yep.
And so there's a real value there. But it's not like a Randy Moss type receiver where he's breaking a game wide open and, you know, needs to be double covered and this, that, and the other. But there's a value. There's one that the 49ers want. There's Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, the offense needs. And, you know, finding the value of that is, you know, That's where the devil is right now.
Well,
For us, it's easy. I mean, I think we've had a number for about 5 or 6 months that just seems to make total sense. But this is what these guys do for a living, so they know more than we do.
Yeah, Aiyuk is not Nick Bosa, but like if we had written down a number for Nick Bosa at this time of the year last year, we would have written lower than what he got. Like they cost themselves money, I think, because like 34 was just a like unbelievable number. It was a number he wanted, I understand, but like it was higher than I thought they would have had to go, partly because it took so long. I mean, it just at some point you just say, here's a number we're comfortable with. We're offering it to you. That's it. And I don't know that the 49ers really do that. And they haven't done it in June. That's for sure. On this line, we're also going to like kind of name the 49er people we think have the most pressure going into this season. There's probably some pretty obvious names, but I'm going to start with, maybe less than obvious name. I'll just throw it out there, see what you think. I think Paraag Marathe's got some pressure on him because I think you've got a coach and a general manager who got involved with the Bosa situation, in my opinion, at the end. Like, we just got to get, well, what are you doing? We're going to miss a game with them. What if we lose to the Steelers off the bat and then lose to the Rams? What are we going to do? And so I think there was some push there. I think they would have similar feelings about Brandon Aiyuk. I think Paraag is respected and renowned in the league for being a very tough customer on every single dollar. I think Jed York loves that about him. Marathe's had this job for a long time, not saying that he's unskilled at this. I think there's pressure on him, though, because this gets to a point where they just got to get good players in and not play this long game, and Ayuk's like the number one guy. Purdy will be the same thing next year, but that's another reason why there's pressure on Paraag, knowing that they've got this monster deal for the quarterback coming up. How do you fit everything in before that? But this is on him to be creative. This is on him not to just be the tough guy. And he is a tough guy. Can you be creative and tough? And it's Brandon Aiyuk. It's right now. If this thing goes into September, it's a fail. It's just a fail. And I think there's a number there they can get this at. I don't think Aiyuk is somebody who's determined to for every single bleed. He's not going to get Justin Jefferson's number. I don't think he's asking for it. I just think Paraag Marathe's got some unique pressure on him this season.
Yes, he does. I agree with you. However, I mean, I'll explain it this way. We talk about Brock Purdy being an extension of Kyle Shanahan. Paraag Marathe is an extension of Jed York.
No question.
They're buddies. They're friends. They're Silicon Valley bros. So everything that Paraag is doing is, I'm not saying it's coming from Jed, but it's certainly the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And Jed is involved with the numbers, maybe not the minutia of it all. But if Jed York said, let's get this done tomorrow, it gets done tomorrow.
Yep.
So my point is that I don't think that there's any real pressure on Marathe as far as his job and longevity and things like that. I think he's as safe as anyone for the future because he's a reflection of Jed York.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Can't
job.
fire the owner, Tim.
Or the owner's right hand. No, I'm not saying pressure like he's going to get fired. I'm just saying, as this thing goes, and as Shanahan and Lynch go into this is their 7th season, I believe, whatever it is. Like there's the pressures to just get players on the field and win a Super Bowl. And if you get in the way of that, there's going to be just some amount of pressure on everybody. And I just think Bosa was a kind of landmark, where they pushed it all the way to September and then they just gave in. And I think Aiyuk could be a similar thing. And if they keep coming up with these things, and then if Purdy is the same, I don't think Purdy would be the same thing. But what if it is? What if we're sitting here in a year from now and Purdy's out? Like that would be not good for the entire situation. So I'll just say, like for the well-meaning, the well thought of, the general decent good cheer of this franchise, which has been running well for many years. We'll say that this could be a line of things that could be tricky, and Paraag Marathe's great at his job. Let's see if he can do it. All right, you got a nominee for one of your guys who's under the most pressure?
Yeah, I got a guy named Brock Purdy.
The tough one.
He's going to be
pulled that one out.
I mean, there's the contractual stuff. I actually don't find it all that interesting. But you saw him take on a leadership role throughout last season, and it was even more apparent, I think, in the spring that he sees himself as one of the leaders of this team. He even referred to a rookie or some guy who entered the league after him as a kid. So he's like seeing himself as now as the veteran guy who's steering the ship. And this is counterintuitive, and you'll have to kind of follow my thread of logic here. But last year he's coming back from that elbow injury, and that sort of allowed him to be very single-minded throughout the off season. Just get the elbow back to normal, get the arm as close to normal as possible, and then go from there. This year, he's got added responsibilities. He's doing more. He's doing more physically. He's doing more mentally. He's got more responsibility. He's got more expectation. There's just more of everything this year that he's going to be expected to do. And I think he's as mature as any 24-year-old in this country. So he's somebody who can handle it, but I think that pressure is absolutely there.
Yeah, I mean, we know the talk show pressure. We know, is this guy really one of the guys? Pressure, the last pick of the draft. You're the quarterback for 49ers. You're always going to have pressure on it, but you're Brock Purdy, immense, obviously, with if he has a couple struggling games, is he thinking about the contract? Oh, it's going to be that thing. It's a lot of outside stuff, but you're right. It's the quarterback. So much of this team now is built on the idea that Brock Purdy's really good. And I think it's a correct idea. But if that thing starts to falter a little bit, and then you've got age in a lot of other spots, and you're going to have to commit to this money, like even if it was a mediocre year, Barrows, like he has a slide back year, I don't think he will. If he does, they're still going to have to pay him a ton of money, right? I mean, what's the alternative to Brock Purdy as a starting quarterback for 49ers? Josh Dobbs? Is that, it's like, go see if the Vikings will trade you Sam Darnold. It's that he's the guy, and I have every reason to believe he will be really good, but he is the guy. Yes. Really out of the blue pick there, Barrows. I really stunned us all.
I strained for that one.
Well, I'll give you a different one. Nick Bosa. Not that, we know he's a great player, one of the best 5 players in the league. 2 years ago, defensive player of the year, 19 and a half sacks. But we'd mentioned it. Yeah, he had the long holdout, did not have a great statistical year last year, 10 and a half sacks. And, got Leonard Floyd on the other side. And we always talk about how balancing and, have the other end. You also need the great player just to play great and make tons of plays and just be a wrecker on that side. And he is so often that player. He was at times in the playoffs, at times, sometimes not. So much depends on him. They need a great year out of Nick Bosa. And here's another weird thing, not necessarily this puts pressure on him. Like, we all know how important that edge rusher is. We know the league pays ultimate money for him, has paid it to him, has paid it to many other players. There's not really a correspondence between great edge rushers and Super Bowl wins, Barrows. Like, you just look at it, like J.J. Watt, obviously never Super Bowl, never played Super Bowl. T.J. Watt, his brother, has the most sacks recently of any active player, nowhere near a Super Bowl. Khalil Mack through the years, nowhere near a Super Bowl. Bosa, Nick, and Joey, have not won a Super Bowl. It's just, a franchise quarterback is going to get you like to the big game almost always. I mean, there's guys who've fallen short at times, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, but they give you a shot at it. You feel good because you have that guy. I don't know what the correspondence, Micah Parsons. Like, I don't know, the correspondence is great. You need a great pass rush. Sometimes maybe you don't need a great pass rusher. I know I'm going against most of the things I think, and I know John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan think, but I just think let's see Nick Bosa be one of the 4 best players in the league. He's getting paid like it. I think he is, but I'll just put a little bit of kind of outside public pressure on Nick Bosa to be that kind of guy again.
The only thing that I could think of was the year that the Broncos won in Levi Stadium when they had DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller, and really a noodle-armed Peyton Manning at that point. And those guys are the ones that won that game for them, and they showed up throughout the playoffs. But there were two of them, and I think that's important. And Nick Bosa really hasn't had that pairing. Early on, it was D Ford, and that lasted maybe half a season, and the half a season that they were together, it was good. And then they tried to get a sort of poor man's D Ford and Samson Ebukam, and that never really worked out.
And they traded DeForest Buckner. They traded DeForest Buckner too.
They traded DeForest Buckner. I'm just talking about the other edge, the bookend. Drake Jackson hasn't worked out yet. This is the first time with Leonard Floyd that since D Ford that he's had a real edge presence, a real veteran, somebody that you can lean on the other side. So I think that'll actually take some of the pressure off him. It's basically, aside from Nick Bosa, it's a brand new defensive line. So he does have, as I was describing with Purdy, additional sort of responsibilities and leadership, things like that. I think that's been evolving with him. He's been heading in this direction. I think he's getting more and more comfortable being one of the voices in that room on defense. So I think it's going to be a really nice year for Nick Bosa. Obviously, injuries can play a big role in this, but I'm anticipating really a terrific season for him, because I think that the cast of characters around him are better than they've been since 2019.
And it's, Eric Armstead leaves, and he was, in many ways the leadership, the soul of that defensive line, and now it's got to be Nick Bosa. It has to be.
Yeah.
Has been a team captain. Wasn't last year because they took the vote before he'd signed, and Purdy got that slot. And Bosa will be a captain again, obviously in the Armstead slot. It's the way it kind of all makes sense. But no question, he's got to be the guy, and he is the guy. But it's got to be more than 10.5 sacks. And I know a lot of that is just situational, but that 19, you felt that 19.5 sack season, and you did not quite feel the 10.5 sack season. All right, Barrows, who you got?
I got another Nick for you.
Nick Wagner?
That's not Nick Wagner. Although, yeah, I think he's probably hearing some footsteps out there. No, I'm thinking Nick Sorensen.
That's a good one.
And he probably should be almost tops on our list, just because of what happened last year to the other guy, and the fact that the 49ers were, looking at bigger, more, I don't want to say impactful, but bigger names, bigger personalities for that role this year. So he's going to have a magnifying glass on him, given what his predecessor went through last year. They're going to want more consistency. We just noted that the defensive line is probably better than it's been a few years. That's gotta pay dividends, and it has to happen immediately. I mean, that was a first half of the season storyline from the 49ers last year. Why isn't this defensive line producing? They put all of these resources into this line, and they're going to have to start manufacturing these blitzes. That was a huge storyline coming out of that loss in Minnesota. The zero blitz before the half. Why does this team, why are they calling zero blitzes, and why do they feel that they're compelled to blitz like that when they hadn't before? So it's going to be this very interesting dynamic of, we want things to go back to the way they were, but we also want to change a few things too, so that we're not predictable. And it's up to Nick Sorensen to toe that line and sort of opposing ideas there in that line.
I'll throw Brandon Staley in there. He's in part of that equation too, clearly. Like, is any two assistants going to be watched more than Brandon Staley and Nick Sorensen during games? We're not sure where Staley's going to be. I think you and I both suspect he might be on the sidelines right there with Sorensen. They're going to be watched because Steve Wilkes is, his time in the booth was highly discussed, and then he moves down to the field. Clearly, Nick, Kyle Shanahan and Fred Warner wanted him on the field. So in the middle of the season, they switched that, made him very, everyone aware of where he was, what he was doing. And I think Sorensen and Brandon Staley, what their interaction is, what they talk about during the week, whether Brandon Staley is even allowed to talk to us during the week, all these things will be pretty interesting. I had Purdy and Sorensen as my co-number ones. So Barrows just takes it right from the top. You just didn't mess around. Those two guys are clearly way up there. I'll go with another kind of side one, a little different. Colton McKivitz, still the incumbent right tackle, despite all of us from the outside speculating the 49ers are going to have to replace him in some way. I thought with a draft pick, did not happen. Yeah, he's got to be a better pass blocker. Like this is. He's a better pass blocker, if they just have better pass blocking on the right side, they probably win a Super Bowl. It's like that's almost like right down to it. Not just on Colton McKivitz. It's obviously there are other mistakes made, and I don't think the center's a great pass blocker. There's certainly issues throughout that line except for left tackle. But okay, the 49ers are still going with Colton McKivitz, the 5th round pick who was cut and then brought back. It's not his fault that he's not, a unique talent right tackle, but he's the guy the 49ers are putting out there. I think Chris Foerster is part of this pressure. Again, not getting fired. I'm just saying, like, explain how you guys really want to do this, and then let's see it on the field. So this is a pressure. It's a coaching staff pressure. It's a personnel department pressure, but it's manifested in Colton McKivitz, and a guy that I don't know that many of us think is maybe even an average right tackle in the NFL, right about average, maybe a little less than average. Probably isn't as good as Mike McGlinchey, and obviously costs a lot less. But McGlinchey wasn't a great pass blocking right tackle either. It's just somebody I think that will be scrutinized heavily if there's a breakdown or 2 or 5, and could lead to some moments in tough games if people are coming through that right tackle. This will become something to discuss. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a different angle. I don't think there's a lot of pressure there because there's no one else gunning for his job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Are you going to give it to Brandon Parker?
Jalen Moore?
Jalen Moore has to, well, maybe. But as we've noted many times before, I think it's been more than a decade since Trent Williams has started every game during the season, and he usually misses 2 or 3. So they need Jalen Moore to be sort of waiting in the wings at left tackle. And he's not going to get many snaps at right tackle during the season. He's going to be the left tackle. Also, Trent Williams doesn't participate in every practice, so that's more Jalen Moore on the left side. So there's just not a lot of bodies at tackle, and we've talked about that. I wrote a story about that philosophy. Chris Foerster was very kind of blunt about saying, we feel it's our job to take 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys and turn them into starters, and that's what he's doing. And they've done that, or at least they've attempted to do that, but it's happened more at guard and center than it has tackle. They just stopped drafting tackles after a while. And that's, I'm sure that's related to the dearth of tackles in the college game and whatnot. So I don't know who would be kind of pushing McKivitz for that role. I'll also note that I agree with you that he's probably not as good as Mike McGlinchey, and certainly not as good as McGlinchey in run blocking. However, they had the guy lead the league in rushing last year. With Colton McKivitz starting every game at right tackle. So it's not hindering that offense, the fact that he's not making those sort of dramatic to the sideline blocks that McGlinchey was good at, that Trent Williams can do on the left side. It's definitely a much more powerful kind of left-hand punch in that running game than it is the right-hand punch. You and I sit next to each other in the press box. There's a long run. 9 times out of 10, that run is to the left side.
Yep.
But like I said, they went to the Super Bowl behind it. Christian McCaffrey was the offensive player of the year behind it. So this is the 49ers philosophy. I think they're fine with Colton McKivitz being their right tackle. Now, whether that's smart or not, I don't know. But internally, they don't seem to have any issue with it.
Yep. All right. Who you got?
I mean, Charvarius Ward is interesting because he's entering a contract year. They're expecting him to be elite this year, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And he's been getting steadily better and better. This is a guy that came into the league undrafted.
Yeah.
Every year with him, it's been a slight rise, and he just has to sort of continue in that way. And I think he will. I think he's a very, very bright person, a bright player. And I think that combined with his physical gifts means that he's able to improve each year, but they're going to give him more and more responsibility. And the expectation for him is, this is the year you're going to turn into a top 3 cornerback in this league. And I think he's going to do it, but it's just, it's pretty high expectations inside the building.
I'm a little surprised they didn't do a restructure with him. Just get him out another year, guaranteeing him some more money. Just take care of that for now, so he doesn't hit free agency. What if he has a great year, 5 interceptions, and locked down in that spot? They don't really have someone established on the other side. Maybe Lenore is, but we'll see on that. You kind of want him under contract, I would think, and not have him hit the market, but. Also, there's some ages, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised if they announce kind of a late restructure for him, like going into training camp. I just think they like him a lot. He's so important. Again, if they don't have him, what are they going to do? Like, what if he got hurt for 8 games? It would be problematic, right? It would be.
Oh yeah.
Flashing back to that, what was it, 2020, when they were just rotating people for Dre Kirkpatrick and Josh Norman and whatever, like. It wouldn't be quite that bad, but it would not be great if they did not have him. And I think they really, remember, it was like they want him chasing the best receiver on the other team. They want him traveling with him. Steve Wilkes kind of resisted that until I guess John Lynch decided that he was traveling with DK Metcalf that one game. There could be more of that. I think, when you have a cornerback that good, you want to emphasize that kind of thing. So we shall see. That's a good one. I almost had him down on my list. That is a very good one. I'll throw my last one is a little different again. Went a little different for this list. I'm going to say George Kittle. They love him in there, right? Important in the locker room. All the things he says and does and plays so tough. And he's a 2-way tight end. The best 2-way tight end still in the league. But he's not young. I think he's 30 now. You look at that. If you look at somebody whose cap number they might not be loving for next season, not this season, but for next season, the way they kind of were looking at Armstead last season, George Kittle's got to be the top of that list. And I'm not saying like he won't be on the team if he has not a great year. I'm saying it will be under discussion. I think Kittle knows it. I think the whole locker room knows it. And they might ask him to take a pay cut. Juszczyk took the pay cut and Armstead didn't. And I think if we start going into the future, like who's somebody who might be asked to do that? If he doesn't have a huge year, I think George Kittle probably will be asked. And they might dress it up in a restructure or something. They may not call it that, but it is. If you look at those numbers, Debo's number. We know Debo. They basically admitted like Debo. Who knows what he's going to be in 25? The other one I think is George Kittle, and he doesn't have a ton of guaranteed money. I mean, it doesn't have a big dead cap hit at that point. I don't know. I just think I'm not saying it's urgent. I'm not saying it's a crisis. I'm just saying you look at people who's going to be scrutinized by that personnel department and certainly by that accounting staff as they look to 2025, knowing the money that they're going to be paying and possibly have a huge deal with Aiyuk already in the banks by that point. I'm putting George Kittle on that list.
I'll respond to that the way I did to the McKivitz one. Who else do they have?
Yeah, well,
I
that's
mean,
also
Sam Latu hasn't even practiced this year, and he's coming off a totally wasted, I was going to say freshman year, rookie season. I can't name you their number 2 tight end because he's so anonymous. The name always just kind of escapes my brain, but that's where they are at tight end right now. Again, they don't have anybody waiting in the wings at that position, unfortunately. I mean, and we can have a separate podcast about the wasted Trey Lance years, the picks that they gave away to trade up to get Lance, and a tight end could have been in that mix. A tackle could have been in that mix. Yep. So that's part of that discussion. I also will note that George Kittle went over 1,000 yards last year, and he's still a hell of a blocker. He was one of the 2 or 3 top tight ends in the league last year. But he does tend to be hurt at the end of the year. It always seems to be kind of fighting through injuries, and you wonder at what point will he take a step back? Will he regress? Because that's probably going to be coming in his 30s, because he has given so much of himself to that position. The joke is that he plays inline tight end. Travis Kelce basically is a big slot receiver. So he's not taking the abuse, the daily abuse that George Kittle is. And George Kittle is seems to be paying the price just about every offseason.
Yeah, I mean, another kind of inline and also receiving 2-8 tight end of that town's Rob Gronkowski. He retired, right, at like 31, and then came back for a couple years, and then is now retired. Like, you just don't see great inline tight ends at age 35. You just don't. I wish you did. The guys who have longevity tend, like Tony Gonzalez or whatever, tend not to be the guys who are blocking all the time. So we'll see. I'm not saying write them off. I'm just saying it would be good for George Kittle to have a really big season. He does seem to work really well with Brock Purdy. We know at the end of 2 years ago, who was Brock Purdy throwing touchdowns to? Like every time it was George Kittle. Less of that last season, but it just you want to surround Brock Purdy with guys who are very familiar. And you're right. I don't know who they would have at tight end. I'm just saying, if you want somebody who like, oh, wait a minute, they did what contractually with this guy next March, I think Kittle is on that list. You got a last one, or is that
only that I just looked up the name of the tight end that I think is going to have the second most snaps this year, and it's Eric Saubert. And he's an inline blocker. He's a good blocker, but I don't think a lot of people are going to be rushing out to buy Eric Saubert number 83 jerseys.
Remember when I asked a few weeks ago, I asked Kyle, like, hey, you drafted a receiver, and you maybe could you go more 3 wides? And he just like, no, what are you talking
about? Not what we do here.
I mean, I do think you could. I mean, if you really believe in Purdy, do you really need to throw the ball fewer than any team in the league? I mean, you got a lead, you're going to run a ball, but the Falcons and Matt Ryan were not afraid to throw the ball 40 times, and that was Kyle Shanahan. I just think they could get to that point, and you could go 3 wides. You could just go 3 wides or play Juwan Jennings. As you know, I kind of think of him as a tight end anyway, and play it that way and run out of a spread formation. Sean McVay, that's what McVay does, and they run very well. And when they have good running backs, they ran great last season. So, giving Kyle's very direct, immediate response to my question, maybe they won't, but like, I don't know, like, do you really need that extra tight end when you could go 3 wides, whether it's with Juwan Jennings and just have Juszczyk be your move back? It's not Kyle Shanahan's thing with the 49ers. I'm saying if you really like your quarterback, maybe you go for it. That 4th down throw to Kittle in the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't you could just do stuff like that? And I realize that's to the tight end, but you don't need to run the ball every single friggin' time on 3rd and short. So, all right. You got anything else, Barrows?
Only that run and shoot Kawakami just wants to throw the ball 85 times a game.
If you're going to freaking pay Purdy,
I'm sure Christian McCaffrey doesn't want that. I'm sure Brock Purdy doesn't want that. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Draft a right tackle, drop back 45 times a game. Come on, Kyle. You know you want to do it. You want to just throw that friggin' ball. It is. I mean, I'm looking at some of the Purdy stats. You and Lombardi did a piece on kind of just evaluating Purdy, going through the state of the team. You look at those stats. His stats are unbelievable for the amount of times he threw it. It was way less than every other top quarterback. And yet the totals are right there with them because the efficiency is sky high efficiency.
It's the same thing we just said about Aiyuk. It doesn't get a lot of catches, but when he catches the ball, it's almost for 20 yards a catch.
Yep. And what Purdy threw the most 20 yards plus passes in the league last year.
Big arm Brock, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the numbers are outstanding. Like, not just outstanding, they are amazing last year. And yet we know there's room for him to get better. He had a couple bad games. You just take out one of those, take out the Browns game or the Ravens game, and you sub in a normal game for him. And he's looking at 38 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Yeah.
Throwing the ball, maybe, close to 4,000 yards. I don't know that That's quite possible the way they play it, but they could get to 4,000 yards passing with an incredible efficiency, with 8 to 9 yards per attempt. Like this is the way power teams do it. They were very close to it last season. Just outstanding. Like, yeah, man, let him throw the ball 3 more times a game, Kyle. Just let him. You're gonna pay him so much money. Just let him throw it a little bit, and you might save some. Like if you're spreading the ball out, you're not giving it to Purdy, not having McCaffrey run 18 times. You're having him run 15 times. Like there might be different ways to do this. All right, I know Kyle's not. He's going to completely shut that down. I'm completely wrong. That's just me throwing it out there in a late June conversation. All right, I think that's it for now. We're probably going to go dark unless there's an Aiyuk signing or an Aiyuk whatever. We might pop back in for emergency pod, but barring that, we'll probably see you. We'll come back mid-July with some come firing right for camp. We'll be gearing up for what will be a very interesting training camp. Barrows, you got anything else?
That's it. That's it for me.
All right, everybody. Thanks. That's the show for today.